Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, I want to talk about 3 things that we can do as property owners to help the bucks in our neighborhood survive one more year or until the following hunting season. We've been pretty fortunate on a few of the properties that we hunt that quite a few of those younger bucks are surviving to that next year, which then gives us more opportunities at older bucks. The more younger bucks that we can help survive, we can make it that one more year, the more older bucks we're going to have in the area, which hopefully translates to getting more opportunities at those older bucks. Now, I am in no way saying that every single buck in our area is surviving because of what we're doing. That's absolutely not true. These are wild animals. We still lose bucks to the neighbors, but I can say that after we started doing these 3 things, we have noticed a pretty significant increase in the number of bucks and the age of the bucks in the area and on our property. Most of the time when I put these lists together for these videos, there's not really any order to them. They can kind of go in any order. But for this video, I am going to put them in order, and we're going to put them in order from the hardest to the easiest, or the most challenging thing that you need to do on your property to the easiest thing that you can do on your property to help these bucks survive. And the first thing that we want to be doing, and this is going to be the most challenging thing, it's not necessarily hard, it's just going to require the most work, and that's to make sure that these deer spend as much time on our property as possible by improving it through habitat work. A lot of the properties that I visit here in Michigan throughout the off-season all face a similar challenge, and that's that a lot of these properties don't have quality habitat. They have a closed canopy, open hardwoods. In other words, they're not giving the deer everything that they need on their property. In order to protect bucks or get them to that next year, whatever that year is, you need these deer to be spending more time on your property than they previously were. Now again, I'm not saying that they're going to spend their entire life on your property. That's not realistic. But you want them to be spending more time on your property than the neighbors, or at least more time on your property than they were previously. This gives you more control and less control to your neighbors. So anything that we can do as a landowner or a property manager to make our property more attractive, to encourage those deer to spend more time on our property than they were before, through habitat improvements, we need to try to do it. Whether that's putting in food plots, creating bedding areas, carving deer trails through your property, hanging mock scrapes, this will slow a deer up, putting in water holes. Everything that we do is going to help make our property more attractive to encourage these deer to spend more time on our property than the neighbors, or more time on your property than they were before. And every property or every area will be a little bit different with what you'll need to provide to make it more attractive to the local deer herd. For example, some properties might need to focus more on cover, while other properties, this is mine right here, we need to focus more on food to be more attractive to the local deer herd. Depending on your area, you'll need to place an emphasis on different aspects of habitat improvement. Instead of a buck walking through your property that's open hardwoods, probably at a pretty quick pace because he doesn't feel safe, we can slow him down with habitat improvement. Add bedding opportunities on your property to increase the chance that he might bed on your property. Cut some trees down to get more sunlight to the forest floor, increasing your stem count. This is going to thicken your property up, making that buck feel much more comfortable moving around. Instead of having to move through pretty quickly through a wide open hardwoods, he can take his time, move slowly through your property. Carve out a few microplots or staging plots on the way to his destination food source. He's going to be much more comfortable feeding in a small, secluded food source as opposed to that wide open destination field. The longer you can keep this buck on your property during daylight, the better. The more control you have as opposed to your neighbors. And hang a few mock scrapes along the way at key stand locations. If he stops at each one of these mock scrapes, that's time he's spending on your property when before he would have just walked right by that location. And when it comes to hunting, those little delays can add up and make a big difference. If he stops a couple times along his way from his bed to his food source, that might be the difference from spending all of the daylight time on your property to being on the neighbor's property just at last light. Anything that we can do to help keep deer or keep bucks on our property a little bit longer is going to make a huge difference when it comes to helping those bucks survive. The next thing that we can do, or the second thing that we can do to help keep the local bucks alive, is actually pretty easy. It just is a little challenging at sometimes and takes a lot more self-control. And that's that we need to keep a majority of our property as a sanctuary for the entire hunting season. Now, this does not mean that we're not hunting our property. It just means that we're hunting the correct stands for the correct time of day. We're taking wind into consideration at all times. We have great access to and from our stand locations. We're trying to keep the hunting pressure or the perceived hunting pressure on our property low so the deer on our property feel safe. The lower the hunting pressure on your property, or the less hunting pressure the local deer feel on your property, the more likely they are to spend more time on your property. And obviously the flip side of that, the higher the hunting pressure, the less likely deer are to spend daylight time on your property. This will push them to the neighbors where you have no control over which deer get shot and which deer can survive to the following season. Now, this does not mean that if you have very low hunting pressure on your property, the deer are never going to leave. They are going to leave, but they're going to leave less often if with low hunting pressure compared to high hunting pressure. This is actually a trend that we've witnessed on our property over the last several years, and hopefully it stays true this year. And that's that as the hunting season progresses, we notice an increase in daylight deer activity or daylight buck activity. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that, one, we have quality habitat, but two, our neighbors are hunting very aggressively in the early part of the season. So I'm not really sure how they access their properties or what stands they're hunting at what time, but the deer definitely notice that they're there. And because of that, they shift onto our property to where they start spending a lot of daylight time on our property. Because we keep the perceived hunting pressure low, deer feel more comfortable spending their daylight time on our property, giving us more control over which bucks get shot and which bucks don't. At the beginning of this video, I said I was going to put this list in order from the hardest thing or the most challenging thing that we can do to the easiest thing that we can do to help our bucks survive. So the final thing that we can do, and the easiest thing, is to show some restraint. We need to have some trigger control. If we want to see more bucks, if we want to see older bucks in our area, then we need to do our part by laying off the younger bucks. Now, with this one, just like with a lot of things we talk about, every property is going to be different. Every hunting group is going to be different with what they're targeting. Deer herds are not the same across the country. They're not the same across the state. They're not the same across a county. A great place to start would be with your hunting group, the people hunting your property. Get together and set a common goal. Make sure it's a realistic goal, but once you have that goal set, then you know which deer you need to pass to help those bucks survive. If you want to start seeing more 3.5-year-old bucks on your property, then you have to start passing on those 2.5-year-old bucks. Same thing if you want to start seeing more 4.5-year-old bucks. You can't see 4.5-year-old bucks if you keep shooting 3.5-year-old bucks. And just so we're clear, I don't care what anybody shoots as long as it's legal. If you're happy with the buck, then I'm happy for you. But I think sometimes we as hunters, we want to see older bucks in our area, but at the same time, we have a hard time laying off those younger deer. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video on 3 easy things that we've been doing to see more bucks and older bucks on our property. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.